Welcome back to Decoded, where we explore the future of work, leadership, and technology. Today's episode is one I've been looking forward to, especially for our tech and revenue leadership audience. We're joined today by George Lagone, partner at RevenueShift and veteran in sales performance and strategy. George has helped some of the top commercial leaders in the world rethink how they approach growth, talent, and transformation. And how, with AI becoming embedded in every corner of go-to-market, the role of revenue leadership is changing fast. So the big question today is this: are revenue leaders becoming tech leaders? And if so, what does that mean for strategy, talent, and entire structure of modern sales? So welcome, George. Would you like to tell our audience a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, Rudo, appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. Have been in commercial effectiveness, sales effectiveness for virtually my entire career. But I've also was kind of a technologist early career. So just by way of background and for this audience, I got my degree in computer science and quickly went into IT consulting with Accenture. And that was where I spent kind of the early part of my career before getting into management consulting, kind of post business school. As we all know, that there's kind of during the time that I came up in consulting, technology went from being siloed to kind of touching every part of an organization, right? Which is kind of what we're going to get into here and how it touches the commercial organization. Our firm, RevenueShift, specifically deals with sales strategy, sales performance, and sales organization. So everything kind of enabling go-to-market strategy, a lot of kind of the sales spike of what would roll up to a chief revenue officer. So we really start with helping define total addressable market, sales addressable market, and obtainable market, doing segmentation, targeting work, then also designing your sales organization, figuring out how to deploy your salespeople, designing your sales roles, and then kind of the last piece of it is what we call sales performance, right? So this is around setting up compensation programs, quota setting, and then related benchmarking as well. So thanks for having me on.
Of course, thank you for joining us today. And it's clear to see that your input is going to be very valuable here. So let's take it from the top and let's start from the leadership. You recently mentioned that in quite successful companies, we're seeing CIOs and CROs now co-owning the revenue transformation. But that wouldn't have happened 5 years ago. Why do you think this partnership is becoming more and more essential?
Yeah, it's really about the importance of the revenue platforms, right? Where in the past, and call it the past 20-ish years, maybe somewhat before that, but your customer relation, your CRM was kind of the thing people thought about when it came to commercial enablement. And that was kind of it from a technology standpoint. And now there's so many other tools and enablement platforms that go into the commercial technology stack. It is very broad and very deep. The other part of it is that the number of data sources your commercial platforms need to get into to be really effective touch so many other parts of the business that you really need someone from technology leadership, be it your CIO, CTO, maybe both, to help with bringing in, evaluating, and ultimately standing up and rolling out your commercial enablement platforms, whether that's a Salesforce, a Gong, any other ICM or SPM system, just because they touch so many other places. You want to make sure that you have data access strategy, cybersecurity strategy, where those programs can get into that data, because that data that sits in other places is what really makes those tools powerful. AI is a whole new layer to this. You have a model that is going out and really wants to kind of scour your data universe, right? Whatever data sources you have to help your salespeople be the most effective. It's a really complicated thing from a technology implementation and architecture standpoint, but it's also a really risky thing from a cybersecurity standpoint, right? You kind of have this system that's really reaching into all these parts of your organization from a technology standpoint that chief CISOs really like to have silos, right? It's how you protect data. And now all of a sudden you have these systems that are kind of going across and want to get into everything. So yeah, the more you can kind of bring in technological leadership when you're rolling out commercial enablement, that's where we've seen our clients be really successful with it. Granted, it's not something that we do, right? We don't do the implementation. There's other firms that are better at it, but we're like directly adjacent to it. So we kind of get a front row seat a lot of the times.
Awesome insight. And so, for those firms who don't necessarily have the capacity to introduce CIOs to work together with CROs, or they don't even have CIOs in some companies. What learnings from their CIOs, the way tech teams and tech leaders think, what those RevOps leaders can learn from it?
Yeah, I think revenue operations leaders are typically working on incredibly tight time frames, right? Not that everybody isn't. I know it's a bit of a cliche, but when there are plans to move an organization forward, have growth plans, if you're early stage, if there's new leadership, et cetera, I mean, the timeline to hit new growth goals a lot of times is 2 quarters, 3 quarters, 4 quarters out, and you're talking about standing up enterprise systems to support these people in a really rapid fashion. Unless you have buy-in from your technology leadership, whatever title that person has, you're going to be halfway down the revenue plan before you even get your support lined up for it. So if you want to move faster than normal, you have to have someone, if you want to move faster from normal from a revenue standpoint, you have to have somebody from technology leadership there kind of supporting you and moving roadblocks out of the way to say, look, this is a priority. We need to get this done. Everything else we're doing is great, but if the revenue isn't coming in, none of this matters, right?
Yeah, of course. Okay, and are there any other risks of not bridging this gap between tech thinking and RevOps thinking?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really about adoption too, right? Where if you don't have your technology leadership really bought into what you're doing, trying to roll a system out to your commercial workforce is far more likely to fail, right? You just need them to be a great partner. So you're making sure that you have a well-functioning system that if you are doing prototypes or early experiences with maybe limited functionality, that what's out there is useful so that you could develop buy-in for it. Nothing is going to kill a sales enablement tool or platform rollout like a salesperson who has deals in the pipeline, things to close, other things to do. They get into this thing and they use it and it doesn't work right away, their willingness to stay and learn on it is far less than your average user.
Wow. And well, also from experience, I know that a big deterrent to some revenue teams is the amount of data that they have, but they don't
Yeah.
necessarily know what to do with it. And they're swimming in that data, but they struggle to actually get actionable insights. So why do you think that is such a big challenge?
Yeah, I mean that's it's not a new challenge, right? It's kind of been here for probably going on a decade, right? Where you are data rich but insight poor, right? Is a really common challenge across a lot of organizations. And I don't think it's no one person's fault, right? You kind of have data spread out across multiple systems, right? Is there actionable commercial data and insights in your ERP? Yes. In your CRM? Yes. In your kind of 365 data, in your interactions and communications? Absolutely. Just kind of drawing the lines and pulling all of those things together. The ability to do that prior to the rapid adoption of AI period that we're in, I think was really, really limited. And if you wanted to do it and develop a system that reached into all of those without using some sort of LLM or other AI enabled tool, I think was a really, really big endeavor to do without having a hard and fast commercial economic return case built for it. It was a really hard pill to swallow for leadership to go through the time, the spend, the distraction to roll that out, where AI is making that a far more rapid adoption.
And I was going to say, so what does that truly insights-driven engine look like you've seen in companies now?
Yeah, I think there's some tools that are out there that will kind of sit sidecar on calls with people and give them insights from their data and also from their call in real time. Follow-up questions you could ask, things like that when salespeople are on calls. Next best motions, next best actions, right? Where all of this is coming in a really rapid fashion, so you don't have to sit and think about, well, should I send this prospect, this brochure? Should I invite them to this event, right? Your AI sidecar model is at least suggesting some of what the next best motions are for you to help a deal down the track. I've also seen some models and tools that are really good at flagging likelihood to close deals, so at risk deals, also at risk clients. I've seen this in the professional services space, be it law, consulting, things like that, where there's AI models that are really monitoring the health of a client, be that with new projects, revenue streams, number of touch points with certain leaders, etc., that can flag when is an account or a relationship at risk to churn. But so some really, really neat things out there, but we're very much in the first couple of years in it, right? It's still, I would say, maybe not bleeding edge, but we're still out there on the leading edge for it.
Wow. And yeah, of course, you'll need a team to even know what to do with those tools. So you've spoken as well about embedding analytics talent inside
Yeah.
sales. How does that change the game and how does it work?
Yeah, it's what we're talking about here. I think the adoption and the use of technology that marketing has been forced into over the past kind of call it all three phases of a digital revolution, right? Web 1.0, early days internet, Web 2.0 with socialization, and now if you call it 3.0 or kind of the AI age, marketing has been on the front foot of that kind of at all times, right? Okay, we used to run ads. Now we have data backing it. Now we're in the social age and I have to understand how users are interacting with my pages, my content, right? How does that come back with events and having this really holistic view of how do people view us? How do our customers view us? And now you're getting into AI where marketing people are now using it for content creation, right? Kind of the lower level tasks, like how able am I to automate a lot of lower level tasks that I was doing? Where I'm going with this is the same thing is happening to sales now, finally, where there's a lot of these kind of off the side of your desk or sales support things that are happening that are now being able to be done for you. As a result, though, having someone who is, a data scientist, or a really technologically savvy RevOps person, this is about setting up systems so that they're reaching into the right data sources, listening for the right things, filtering the right prompts so that the salespeople are getting the correct data, right? Think about it if you were a marketing person, now or anytime in the last 10 years, and you went into kind of GA4 raw, right? And didn't have any reporting set up or didn't understand it. It's like, well, this is great, but what am I supposed to do with it, right? And it's really the person who's got the technological background that could kind of know what's coming out of GA4 to put that into something actionable for people, right? And understand, okay, these are the data sources. This has gone from data source to insight, something potentially actionable, but how do I help that person, my marketing people, really sift through this and show them what is real? The same thing is happening on the sales side.
Wow. So that kind of indicates the whole shift in organizational design. How, of course, with sales, the more high volume sales tasks being taken and done by AI and those insights, the incredible amounts of data. So, what are the biggest challenges that revenue leaders are experiencing these days with building those org structures?
Yeah, I think part of it is one learning, right, to do it. It's many of the chief revenue officers out there were still just a head salesperson, right? And I think it's this adoption, this movement to kind of the true CRO role where they are taking on sales, marketing, revenue operations, kind of all sitting under their organization. And quite honestly, it's them learning what needs to be done in each of those organizations, and they knew sales really well, but they're maybe not used to working in a really data rich environment, right? Where now they have responsibility for those organizations. That's one of the major blockers with it. Yeah, I think um, there's a big challenge in having more and more disaggregated, technologically skilled people spread across the organization that aren't just housed underneath the CIO or CTO, right? And this has been going on for some time. I think it's just another new area where you now have highly skilled technological folks who are now sitting under the sales org, sitting under RevOps, right? And the CIO still wants dotted line visibility into what they do. The CISO probably does, and just kind of understanding and being comfortable with this even more matrix organization structure. I think is something that organizations have to get over first. That's kind of the first hump before they could really run it run it effectively, and ultimately know what's the model of person I need in each of those roles to then go hire them, right? Or to evaluate them correctly, or to know how to direct them to get the most out of them to enable revenue from them.
Yeah, absolutely. So not only the actual CRO's role is changing and they need to be more technologically able,
Yeah,
but also they need to understand how to guide their teams correctly and
right.
how to, like you just mentioned, evaluate the teams correctly, which brings me to the other question. With AI doing so much of top funnel work, how do we rethink sales quotas, KPIs, and overall what does performance mean from your team?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think sales KPIs and quotas. The good news, it's good news and bad news, right? There was always quite a bit of activity that good salespeople had to do off the side of their desk, and you argue that's what their salary is there for, right? Not their incentive or their commission. To do that desk research, to do their own prospecting, right? It's as much as we love, marketing and BDRs and SDRs, the best salespeople do their own prospecting, right? Or do a high level of it. Now that gets easier, right? So I think this is actually a great age for salespeople because more and more of their effort is just dedicated to selling because more things that were kind of off to the side, non-selling work are getting taken off of their plate or reduced. So now their performance is really reflected in their number. So good news, yes, I could just go out and sell. Bad news is I think there's actually even more onus on making their financial target because more and more the non-financial things are being taken off your plate. So if you're not delivering your number, what are you doing for me?
Absolutely. And so, what is the general archetype that you advise revenue leaders be looking for in their sales team?
Yeah, when it comes to the kind of technological folks who are sitting on your team, the archetype for that, it's really interesting, right? It is a rare combination of technologically savvy or hard technology trained people who really understand the revenue process and understand sales or been close to customers before. So that blend of kind of commercially facing, even if they're not a seller, having maybe done it in the past, as a early career job or something like that, and having some level of familiarity and even really empathy of what salespeople are going to try to help enable them, just having that frame of reference. So it's going to be that rare combination of those two skills that's really going to be the key to success. Because a pure technologist, if you don't have the frame of reference for what the sales org is dealing with, you're just losing some fidelity. So that's really the big thing with the high tech RevOps people that you need on your team. From a sales standpoint, I think it's people who are really willing to trust and understand the data and the insights that are being handed to them. So that's a bit of new breed or kind of more recent breed of salespeople that are used to working in this more data rich environment. Salespeople out of really large enterprise technology firms are so sought after, right? They're used to working in this data rich environment. They are willing to use it. They trust the insights that are being given to them much more so than maybe legacy industries. And honestly, they demand it. So they're really great change agents in an organization. They're saying, why don't we have Gong stood up? Why are you calculating my incentive compensation on a spreadsheet? And their loud voices typically your high performers are, right? So can really help kind of drive change.
Absolutely. We've got a couple of those in our team, which have a
Yeah.
very it's been a challenge to find them, but once we did,
Yeah.
that was great.
Yeah.
Cool. And now turning ourselves more towards the actual CROs, how they become tech users to actually tech collaborators.
Yeah.
Uh, they need to understand the technology and in your opinion, what level of technical fluency should we expect from commercial leaders today?
It's what should we reasonably expect versus what's reality. I do think that by and large, the chief revenue officer or whoever the head commercial person is, 90% of the time they came up through sales, right? So this is someone where technology has not been front of mind for them over the course of their career. Odds are they were a great closer, they were a great manager, they're a really good people developer, they have a ton of other skills. Technology adoption and knowledge kind of depth in it has been far down the list for them. Do we need to expect that out of them? I think so, right? More and more. Because I think the best kind of CROs and commercial leaders are going to understand the power of what some of these tools and platforms can do and adopt them, bring them in, be willing to be a good partner, dedicate resources from their team, which really may mean taking sales performance off the table to get them implemented. So I think it's a willingness to invest. And when I say invest, really from a time and resources standpoint, to push back into that kind of technology adoption. That's the thing that I would be looking for if I were on a leadership team looking for a CRO, knowing that we want to really level up our commercial tech stack. It's have they done this before? Do they see the value in it? Are they a really good collaborator or are they a better dyed in the wool seller, right? You kind of need to know which leader do you need for that season in your company.
True, great insight. And so, for those revenue leaders listening to us right now, where do they even start upskilling themselves?
Yeah, I think there's really great places, there's great associations, there are some really good organizations out there, especially if you're in the tech space, to get out there and learn about these things. As we know in the technology space too, many of the conferences are dominated by vendor conferences, right? More so than trade associations. So can make it tough, but it those conferences and things like that are really great opportunities to learn about the products, especially if you are looking for a new CRM, a new sales enablement platform, a new marketing enablement platform, right? Just kind of getting into the ecosystem, letting people know that you're a buyer will get you invitations to different events, et cetera. And we know everyone's trying to sell you something, but it's also a really good time to learn.
Awesome. And until that time comes when all revenue leaders are upskilled, how does collaboration between them and tech teams look like?
Yeah, it's right now, I think it's reasonably limited to when there is an initiative going on. Um, Honestly, I think it needs to be more regular. Uh, to have a discussion between your technology leadership and your commercial leadership to make sure your people are getting the right information. Are they being enabled correctly, right? And having this be kind of part of a normal cadence where, okay, last quarter, here's what we saw. Here were some issues that we dealt with. We'd love to have this insight available to us. We've heard about this tool, etc. Can you help us understand what is our data and technology environment look like right now? Is this something that we could stand up quickly? Is this worth it? Right? It is what we ran into. Is that something that's even realistic for us to use or adopt? But kind of having an ongoing dialogue rather than this opportunistic or kind of one-time, one-off conversations.
Of course. And so, for your peers in RevOps and sales leadership, what is the one question they should be asking their teams or tech marketers today if they wanted to stay competitive in 2025 and beyond that as well?
Yeah, I think they should be going back to and talking to their technology leadership. And I mean, kind of at the top levels, right? CIO, CTO. These are people who may have been technologists, but have risen to the level of being fully invested on the business, right? Are typically really, really business savvy. And asking them to come in and say, you understand what this business is driving at. You understand what our data environment looks like, right? We're data rich. What's out there that you think we could be utilizing that maybe we're not, or maybe that's not getting across to us, right? And treat them as a thought partner, right? You don't have to do everything that they do, but at least get their opinion back the other way.
Hmm. Okay. And how can they get ahead of the curve, for example, by investing in embedded analytics?
Um, I think part of getting ahead of the curve really has to do with kind of adoption. I think there's a lot of unwillingness of sellers to adopt, and understandably so, right? Their goals, their aims, what they're measured on, what they're paid on is just typically not centered around being a great adopter of technology, right? But I think it's now that we are able to take off your plate some of these things. And this is, again, kind of assuming that you're in a highly enabled environment where maybe some of this prospecting is being taken off of your plate, maybe some of this desk research is being taken off your plate, etc. That's freeing up time for you, right? Are you using some more of that for closing and for selling? Yes. But I think also take some of that time that's been given to you and lean into the tools and platforms that have been given to you. Really understand how to use them. What's the depth of insight there? Find out, is every single thing that it produces going to be a game changer for you? No, but get into it, know what it can do so that you can take the pieces of it that are really, really valuable to you and leverage them to be a better seller.
Awesome. Thank you so much, George. It's such powerful insights and very powerful conversation. And you've made it very clear that the future of sales is not just about closing, but it's about collaboration. It's about
Yeah.
data fluency and designing organizations that generally keep up the pace with constant change. And to our listeners, if you're a tech revenue leader navigating this new landscape, this is your moment to lean in differently. And don't just add AI, rethink the system it lives in overall. You can learn more about George's work at revenueshift.com. And as always, check out our show notes for key takeaways and links. Until next time, stay curious and stay future ready. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Decoded. And if you're a tech leader navigating the evolving world of AI and organizational design, or if you're someone looking to break into tech, change careers, upskill, or simply find the right job support, we're here to help. At Coding Temple, we specialize in talent pipeline advice and workforce upskilling, preparing people and teams for the future of work through hands-on training and our dedicated careers camp. Thanks again for tuning in, and don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you next time as we explore more ways to thrive in a tech-driven world.